What's up, guys? I'm SaltEMike, and this is your Star Citizen Week in Review for June 7th, 2021. We had a monthly report and a roadmap roundup this week that is giving me some hope for this year in Star Citizen, but is that hope warranted? Let's see. And as always, guys, if this is your first week in review, this is where I take all of the official Star Citizen news from the previous week, pile it into one video, and throw some of my opinions in there as well. Also, if you haven't checked it out yet, I live stream on twitch.tv/SaltEMike every day but Monday and Tuesday starting at 6:30 a.m. Eastern Time. All right, so we have a lot to get through this week. It's not just the monthly report and a roadmap roundup. There are quite a few things, and we're going to start out with patch notes updates. We had one patch. It was a 3.13.1 PTU patch, which was basically just testing this weird issue that was causing the game logs to get really, really big and cause instability. So kind of making that not happen anymore seemed to be the general test for this PTU. Now moving on to that monthly report that we talked about, I'll start out with AI. The only thing I really want to include in this is that they're actually working on AI navigating on planets. They can make all the visual changes they want to the moons and planets, but in the end, if they're never going to feel alive if there's not players and NPCs consistently flying around and doing things on them, right? Character art. Mostly, this was just Orison characters. There were some pyro gangs and armor sets that we'll see a little bit later in the video update. Environment art, a lot going on here, talking about outposts and jump points and how the cloud looks around the jump point. The Nix system is in progress from the environment team, so they're even moving past pyro already, which is, I think it kind of shows that the 100 system thing maybe could be a possibility in the future. Harvestables for pyro are being made. More hospital discussion as well from the Montreal team, which basically seem pretty much done on their work. But obviously we talked about in previous weeks that the actor status team wasn't. So no medical gameplay for 3.14. For ship art, they mentioned the Taurus, the Ares, the Drake Vulture, which is starting in June. That's the kind of cool thing I want to point out if it ever came online with gameplay, right? So just remember, the Drake Vulture is the smaller salvage ship. So, that's kind of a big deal. If they're working on it, maybe it coincides with something related to salvage, hopefully. Also, the Saber and Retaliator are in their gold standard reworks, I guess. Weapons art. Greycat salvage tool is the only thing really worth mentioning here, as the other stuff is already basically in the game. Again, just more things related to salvage, but salvage kind of still getting pushed down the line. Engine. I always sort of skip this stuff, but it does seem like there's a lot of optimizations going on, as well as the Gen 12 renderer always being mentioned here in this section, but not quite ready for us to see its performance updates just yet. Maybe a little bit in 3.14, I think. Character features, medical support gameplay. Again, more talking about basically this is what held everything up, right? And what needed a bit more polish. So it does seem really detailed. You can scan players and see their vitals with some cool overlay. You can also administer drugs from this UI, a healing beam with the multi-tool. The med pen is also still a thing, but I can't imagine that its functionality won't significantly change later. The one stop heal thing is obviously not a future plan. There's been lots of talk about this in previous feature updates from SCL, ISC, all sorts of things. This has been mentioned in the past. Also, lastly, the hurt locomotion is being cleaned up and polished because from a third-person perspective, you would want to see it if somebody was hurt and make it really obvious, right? Gameplay features. The player asset manager made a big leap, and it can track basically all the stuff that we own, so we're much more close to not having this giant global inventory system where we magically make things appear on us, right? So that's a good thing. Cargo refractor progress was like, it had a blurb, but all they really said was they didn't really work on anything. They're just really focused on planning it because it touches way too many items of the game to not really plan it out thoroughly, because they could miss something and make a really critical error when adding this functionality to the game. Mining gadgets were mentioned as well. We saw this in an ISC recently. I don't think they're really going to change the mining experience until the rocks we mine change significantly, as I've said many times before. Loot generation, this is something that will likely be pretty meh and boring to start. I think they mentioned like weapons and med pens and food and drink in the loot. So again, nothing like major or worth grinding for to find loot, right? Just yet, but it's paramount to making the game better is having this system function, right? It's just in its early stages as well, so nothing to get too excited about. They're just doing like code stuff, nothing really jumping into the game just yet. Vehicle features, just working on the 3.14 features that we've been talking a lot about, like capacitors and missile operator mode, things like that. And lastly, system tools and services. There's some super P-cache thing that's ready for NPCs for the next release, but more importantly, they are making progress on server meshing and mentioned it there. So as always, anytime server meshing is mentioned, it's quite important. There were other mentions of server meshing in the monthly report because, and I'm mentioning this now because it seems like the teams are starting their prerequisite work for it to come in, preparing their work for a server meshed environment. That's very, very big. We saw that stuff happening with object container streaming and server-side object container streaming, and eventually those things came in. So server meshing just isn't a meme, hopefully. Moving on to roadmap roundup, they added things to the progress tracker. So the quantum travel experience, this seems cool, but we have to remember that we have interdiction ships. So they're really hard to use right now. So when the quantum travel experience improves, I think that this is going to improve that experience as well as like the current experience is like really snappy and jumpy and hands-off. So I'm curious what all this improvement will entail. But again, it's not really due till early next year, so not much of a point putting a lot of effort into that. And yeah, as we know, everything tends to get pushed back anyway, so it'll likely be a while before we see these improvements. Login flow, this is just to resolve a lot of the issues that they've had in the past with a lot of players joining servers for like big events like Invictus and Xenothreat, stuff like that. The reward service, personally, this is everything to me. It's the backend that allows the team to track stats per player and reward us based off of those stats. Unfortunately, this is again one of those items being added to Q1 2022, and again is highly likely to slip away at some point, right? But if there's any one feature I want to see in development in this game, it's this one. So yeah. Changes and removals. There were space mines and bombs have been split into two different things as they need different work. Garages have been taken off because the landing zone teams have higher priorities, and these are going to be coming with Nyx anyway, and that's going to be probably significantly later because we don't even know when we're getting Pyro. Ladders, prone, and actor status tier 2 are also being removed, all temporarily removed because of, again, all the crazy changes that happened with the actor status team a couple weeks ago. They just need to let things settle, I assume, before we know where this stuff can fit back in. Release view. Additions there were canvas sliced ship HUDs. It's just an update to the HUDs, basically. But I can't imagine the image that we saw here is what we're going to get in game. It doesn't feel very Star Citizen. Power Management V2, this is what they renamed capacitors to. They combined all three cards they put on the previous roadmap, but it also describes that this is a more encompassing card than just that. It has power management updates and other things as well. Now we have a lot of things committed for 3.14 as we are really on the horizon of an Evocati patch for 3.14, I would imagine, because yeah, this is due out at the end of June. It's June 7th. Power Management V2 is committed. Canvas Slice Ships HUDs, Law System V2 surrender. So I asked a little bit about this with Jake, and he said this is when the security team scans you, and you'll have the option to surrender after that. So when they scan you for illegal things, and if you have an illegal box on you, they'll come after you, kind of thing. Now you have the option to surrender. That's all this entails. Radar and scanning and ping as well is in there. Missile operator mode and missiles and guidance and control rework. So all those are going to make it into 3.14. Some hope for 3.14 maybe with the power management thing and the radar scanning and ping. We'll have to see. There was a little talk about radar scanning and ping in our Discord with the developer that was working on that today. Possibly some big changes coming, but they were sort of just asking our feedback on some possible changes. Nothing set in stone. Video updates. We had an ISC this week and an SCL. We're only going to touch on the ISC because the SCL was just talking to Pedro Camacho, so if you're interested in that, the link will be in the description. They had a Bengal featurette. This was a featurette that I wasn't really going to touch much on because it's not really super player-facing, except for this.
Unsurprisingly, when you put the Bengal into the PU, it doesn't run very well because there's a lot of entities. It was a huge performance hit. Like, it was insane. Even internally, we were seeing a massive performance drop. If you have a look at any of the AI ships that the pirates use in the PU, there's physically a dude sat in the seat, which at the end of the day costs. Everything has a cost involved with it. After a lot of people doing a lot of hard work and playing about with it and making slight tweaks here and there, we ended up with the AI turret module, which was a huge performance boost.
For Squadron 42, the fact that this wasn't a thing yet for so long is kind of concerning, but also the need to kill NPCs inside the turret and things like that also makes sense too. So the fact that they didn't do it for a long time is kind of has a point, I guess. But as he's talking in more detail, the visuals of the turrets firing was fantastic. I experienced it during the event as well, and it really did create a memorable moment. Now, we also had a sprint report, so we'll start out with the UI sprint on transit signs to newer version of building blocks. It just allows them to swap easier between the themes, and in general is less resource intensive. Greycap mining armor, it does look awesome, but my question is, will it function? Its main functionality is like the backpack is supposed to detach, I think. So yeah, we'll have to see on that. Hacking, this is the first time we've seen it. They first show the terminals in which we will hack, but then a sneak at the hacking UI that they had said we will see next quarter. What does this game remind you of? It looks like Deus Ex, right? Redeemer Greybox interior update, just turrets and HAB modules are on display here, nothing too crazy. Connie dash control updates. They're just bringing these up to date with the newer current systems that we have. The buttons on the holographic thing, Jared made sure he jumped in and said we're not going to be there permanently. They're going to make it more RSI themed. The Ares Starfighter, we got a white box. First look, it's looking really good. That size 7 just giant gun with engines is going to be a new experience, definitely, for a ship to use. The Crusader train, yeah, I need to have this. I definitely tweeted at John Crew and said, give. So yeah, I don't think it's going to work, but I really hope we get those in the future. I just think players like the transport service beacons would be really fun in a ship like this, and then more Orison at night, and as always, it's looking really good. Again, no SCL this week. Moving on to other updates, we had a sneak peek that is the Crusader Ares, and is looking a lot better than the white box update that we saw on ISC. There is a prison feedback thread. Again, they're really trying to address issues with prisons and take your feedback on them because they know that they're problematic and they really want to make them better. But seeing from some of the posts there, it does feel like there are quite a few things that are out of the mission team's hands and are just general Star Citizen problems that we all deal with, but they are significantly worse in prisons. And then lastly, a lore post, which is a historical Xi'an document or something. Feel free to check that out if you guys are into that. I didn't read it, I apologize. But yeah, that's basically what it is. And that's it for this week, guys. So thank you so much for watching. I am going to do my best to edit this very quickly because I only have an hour before I have to leave for work. So I have to edit this and get this up on YouTube. It's going to be crazy. So make sure you leave a like if it does end up on YouTube today. And make sure you share the video around and yeah, leave a comment below on anything we discussed today. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. And I will see you guys next week. Bye, everybody.